Respected viewers, beloved seekers of wisdom and truth, I need to tell you something today that might save your life. Not in the physical sense, though perhaps even that, but in a way that matters just as much. Your financial life, your career, your peace of mind, your future. There are people walking among us right now who will destroy everything you're building. They'll do it with a smile, with charm, with words that sound like friendship but carry the poison of ruin. And the most dangerous part, you won't see them coming until it's too late, unless you know what to look for. Let me take you back to a moment I've never forgotten. I was 29 years old, young, ambitious, hungry to succeed. I just started my law practice. I was working brutal hours, sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night, building something from nothing. And then I met him. We'll call him Richard. Richard was charismatic, successful, 10 years older than me. He seemed to have everything figured out. He took an interest in me, invited me to lunch, asked about my goals, offered advice. I was flattered. Here was this successful man taking time to mentor me, to guide me. Over the following months, we became close. He introduced me to potential clients. We discussed deals. He shared opportunities with me. And then one day, he came to me with a proposal, a real estate investment. Can't miss, he said. I'm putting in 100,000 myself. You should put in whatever you can. This is how wealth is built. I had a 15,000 saved. Everything I'd managed to put aside. The smart part of my brain, the cautious part was screaming warnings. But Richard, he was so convincing, so confident. And I trusted him. I wrote the check. 6 months later, the investment collapsed. Turned out it was never real. Not in the way Richard had described it. The deal was structured so that Richard and a few insiders made money, while investors like me, we lost everything. My 15,000 gone. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing Richard had targeted me. He'd befriended me specifically because he saw I was young, ambitious, and vulnerable. He was a predator, and I'd invited him into my life. That loss, that betrayal, it taught me something more valuable than 15,000 ever could. It taught me that success isn't just about what you do. It's about who you allow into your life. Because the wrong people, they don't just slow you down. They destroy you. They steal your money. They waste your time. They corrupt your judgment. They drain your energy. And by the time you realize what's happened, years have passed, and you're standing in the wreckage of what could have been, so today. I'm going to tell you about the types of people you must avoid. Not because I'm cynical. Not because I don't believe in human goodness. But because I've lived long enough to see the same patterns repeat over and over and over. I've seen brilliant people destroyed by toxic relationships. I've seen fortunes lost because someone trusted the wrong partner. I've seen careers ruined because someone couldn't recognize a manipulator. And I've learned through painful experience how to identify these people before they can do damage. PPUS Type 1, the chronic victim. Let me tell you about a man I knew. We'll call him David. David was talented, genuinely talented, smart, hardworking, good with people. But David had one defining characteristic. Nothing was ever his fault. When a deal fell through, it was because the other party was unreasonable. When a client left, it was because they didn't appreciate quality. When a business failed, it was because the market was rigged against him. David had an explanation for everything, and in every explanation, he was the victim. I tried to work with David on a project early in my career. It was a disaster. Every problem, though, and there were many, was someone else's responsibility. Every setback, someone else's doing. Every failure, the result of forces beyond his control. And here's what I learned. When someone refuses to take responsibility for their failures, they cannot learn from them. And when they cannot learn from them, they will repeat them, over and over and over. The chronic victim is dangerous for a simple reason. They will drag you into their narrative. You'll start out trying to help them, trying to encourage them, trying to give them opportunities. And slowly, gradually, you'll become part of their excuse system. When things go wrong, it will be your fault. When they fail, you didn't support them enough. When they lose money, you gave them bad advice. You cannot win with a chronic victim because they're not looking for solutions. They're looking for someone to blame. Let me be very clear about something. I'm not talking about people who face genuine hardship. I'm not talking about someone who loses their job in a recession or faces a health crisis or struggles through a difficult season. Those are real challenges, and good people face them with dignity. I'm talking about people who have made victimhood their identity, people who have been unlucky for 20 years straight, people who are perpetually on the verge of success if only someone would give them a break, people who spend more energy explaining why things didn't work than they spend actually working. 2, here's how you identify them. Listen to how they talk about their past. If every job ended because of a terrible boss, if every relationship ended because the other person was crazy, if every business failed because of bad luck or unfair competition, you're looking at a chronic victim. And if you let them into your life, into your business, into your financial decisions, they will cost you not just money, time, energy, peace of mind, because you'll spend years trying to help someone who doesn't want help. They want sympathy. They want excuses. They want someone to agree that the world is against them. And when you finally realize you can't save them, they'll make you the villain in their next story. Type 2, the opportunistic friend. This one is subtle. This one is dangerous. Because the opportunistic friend doesn't start out as an enemy. They start out as someone who seems genuinely interested in you. Let me tell you about a woman. We'll call her Margaret. Margaret and I met at a business conference. She was charming, intelligent, well-connected. We had great conversations. She seemed genuinely interested in my work. We exchanged contact information, started meeting for coffee occasionally, and then slowly a pattern emerged. Margaret only reached out when she needed something, an introduction to someone in my network, advice on a business decision, help with a project she was working on. At first, I didn't mind. That's what friends do, right? They help each other. But I started to notice the help only flowed one direction. When I needed advice, she was too busy. When I had an opportunity to share, she wasn't interested. When I was going through a difficult time, she disappeared. Margaret wasn't my friend. I was a resource to her. The opportunistic friend is one of the most common toxic types. They're everywhere, in every industry, at every level. And they're dangerous because they're so good at mimicking genuine friendship. They laugh at your jokes. They ask about your family. They seem to care. But watch what happens when you stop being useful. Watch what happens when you need something from them. Watch what happens when someone more successful comes along. They vanish. Here's how you identify them. Pay attention to the balance of the relationship. Are you always giving and they're always taking? Do they only call when they need something? Do they disappear when you're going through hard times? Do they know everything about your life, but you know nothing about theirs? These are the signs. 2 now. Let me be careful here. I'm not saying every relationship needs to be perfectly balanced at every moment. Sometimes you help a friend through a crisis. Sometimes they help you. Sometimes you give more. Sometimes they give more. That's natural. That's healthy. But over time, over years, there should be reciprocity. There should be genuine care that flows both directions. The opportunistic friend, there's no reciprocity. There's only extraction. They're mining your network, your knowledge, your resources. And when the mine runs dry, they move on to the next person. 2, I've seen people waste years on these relationships. They keep giving, hoping that eventually the friend will reciprocate. They keep helping, believing that loyalty will be rewarded. But it never is, because the opportunistic friend isn't capable of genuine friendship. They're transactional. Everything is a trade. Everyone is a means to an end. And when you're no longer useful, you're discarded. 2, type 3, the toxic pessimist. This one destroys more dreams than almost any other type, because they do it with concern, with care, with what looks like wisdom. Let me tell you about my uncle. My uncle was a deeply pessimistic man. He'd had some failures in business when he was young, lost some money, got burned by a partner, and from that point forward, he saw danger everywhere. Every opportunity was a scam. Every new venture was doomed to fail. Every ambitious person was naive and foolish. When I told him I was starting my law practice, he told me I'd never make it. Too much competition. When I started investing, he told me I'd lose everything. The market was rigged. When I took on a business partner, he told me I'd be betrayed. Partners always betray you. For a while, When I was young, his pessimism affected me. I'd get excited about an opportunity, and then I'd hear his voice in my head. It won't work. You'll fail. You'll lose everything. It created paralysis. Because here's the thing about pessimism. It's always safer in the short term. If you never try, you never fail. If you never invest, you never lose money. If you never trust anyone, you never get betrayed. But in the long term, pessimism is the destroyer of all possibility. To the toxic pessimist is dangerous because they disguise their fear as wisdom. They act like they're protecting you. Like they're the only one brave enough to tell you the truth, but they're not protecting you. They're projecting their failures onto you. They couldn't succeed, so they believe you can't either. They got hurt, so they believe you will too. They're afraid, so they want you to be afraid too. Here's how you identify them. They have a negative comment for every positive development. You get a promotion, more responsibility, same pay. You start a business. 90% of businesses fail. You make an investment. You'll probably lose it all. They frame it as realism, as practicality, as protecting you from disappointment. But watch their lives. Are they successful? Are they happy? Are they building anything? Usually not. Because pessimism is a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe nothing will work, you don't try. If you don't try, nothing works. And then you get to say, see, I told you so. No, let me distinguish this from healthy skepticism. Healthy skepticism says, that's interesting. Let's examine the risks. Let's think this through. Let's be smart, toxic pessimism says. That will never work. Don't even try. You're being naive. One opens doors. The other closes them. One encourages careful action. The other encourages paralysis. I learned painfully to distance myself from the pessimists in my life. Not because I don't care about them, but because I couldn't let their fear limit my possibilities. Every successful person I know has made the same decision. At some point, you have to choose between pessimistic comfort and optimistic risk. You have to choose between people who believe in possibility, and people who believe in limitations. Because you become like the people you spend time with. If you surround yourself with pessimists, you will become pessimistic. And pessimism, unchecked, will destroy every dream you have. Type 4, the envious competitor. This one is particularly insidious because they often look like colleagues, like friends, like allies, but underneath they're seething with envy. Let me tell you about a business associate. We'll call him Robert. Robert and I were in similar fields, similar age, similar trajectory. We knew each other professionally, attended the same conferences, moved in the same circles, and for years, I thought we had a cordial, professional relationship. Then I started to succeed. A big case came my way. I won it. It was publicized. And Robert, he changed. Suddenly, he was making subtle comments. Must be nice to get lucky. I guess it's all about who you know. Some people have it easy. At first, I didn't understand what was happening. Then I realized Robert couldn't celebrate my success because he saw it as his failure. The envious competitor is one of the most toxic people you can have in your life because they don't just want to succeed. They want you to fail. They measure their worth by comparison. If you're doing well, they're doing poorly. If you're moving forward, they're falling behind. Your success is their pain. And here's what makes them dangerous. They'll sabotage you. Not obviously, not dramatically, but subtly, quietly, in ways that are hard to prove. They'll spread rumors about you. They'll undermine your reputation with subtle comments. They'll withhold information that could help you. They'll secretly hope you fail while pretending to support you. I've seen this pattern destroy partnerships, businesses, even families. Two brothers in business together, one becomes more successful, envy poisons the relationship. Two colleagues, one gets promoted, the other becomes an enemy. Two investors, one's portfolio performs better. Suddenly the friendship is over. Here's how you identify the envious competitor. They can never genuinely celebrate your wins. When you share good news, they either change the subject or find a way to diminish it. That's great. But did you hear about my thing? Nice. But that market's probably peaked anyway. They keep score constantly. Who's ahead? Who's behind? Who got what opportunity? And they talk about fairness a lot. It's not fair that he got that deal. It's not fair that she has those connections. But what they mean is, It's not fair that I'm not winning. Let me tell you something I learned. You cannot have genuine friendship with someone who envies you. You just can't, because envy is corrosive. It eats away at every interaction. Even when they're trying to be happy for you, the envy is there. Even when they're trying to be supportive, the comparison is happening, and eventually it will poison the relationship entirely. 2. The envious competitor taught me something profound. That sometimes the people who smile at you in public are the ones undermining you in private. And that realization, as painful as it was, prepared me for an even darker truth. There are people far more dangerous than the envious competitor. People who don't just envy your success, they want to control you, use you, change who you are. 2 as type 5, the manipulator. Let me tell you about the most dangerous person I ever allowed into my professional life. We'll call him James. James was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. He could read people like books. He knew exactly what to say, exactly when to say it, exactly how to make you feel special. When I met James, he seemed like the perfect business partner. He understood my vision. He shared my values. He wanted the same things, or so he made me believe. The first year of our partnership was wonderful. James was attentive, supportive, collaborative. We were building something together. But slowly, very slowly, things started to shift. James would make suggestions, small ones at first. Maybe we should approach it this way instead. I think my contact would be better for this deal than yours. Let me handle this client. I have a better relationship with them. And I'd agree, because they seemed like reasonable suggestions. But over time, I realized something disturbing. Every decision we made somehow ended up benefiting James more than me. Every client relationship gradually became his relationship, not ours. Every opportunity. Somehow he was at the center and I was supporting. 2, the manipulator is the most dangerous type of person you'll ever encounter. Because they don't steal from you, obviously. They make you give them what they want while thinking it was your idea. They don't force you. They guide you. They nudge you. They frame things so that their interest looks like your interest. And by the time you realize what's happened, they've taken everything. Here's what makes manipulators so effective. They study you. They learn your weaknesses, your fears, your desires, your ego triggers. And then they use that knowledge like a surgeon uses a scalpel. Precise, deliberate, effective. If you're insecure about your intelligence, they'll make you feel smart while subtly questioning your judgment. If you're proud, they'll flatter your ego while getting you to do what they want. If you're kind, they'll exploit your empathy by playing victim when it serves them. Let me tell you how I finally saw through James. I was having lunch with a mutual acquaintance, someone who'd worked with James years before, and he said something that made my blood run cold. James? Oh, he's talented, but be careful. He leaves a trail of former partners behind him, same pattern every time. I asked what he meant. He comes in collaborative, then slowly takes control. Then when he doesn't need you anymore, you're out. I went back and looked at our partnership with new eyes, and I saw it, all of it. Every conversation that seemed collaborative had been manipulation. Every compromise I'd made had benefited him. Every time I'd felt vaguely uneasy but couldn't explain why, it was because I was being played. 2, here's how you identify a manipulator. First, they're unusually good at making you feel special. They mirror your values. They understand you deeply. They make you feel seen. But watch, do they do this with everyone? Manipulators are chameleons. They become whoever they need to be to get what they want. Second, you often feel confused after interactions with them. You agreed to something, but you're not sure how or why. You changed your position, but you can't quite remember the reasoning. This confusion, it's not an accident. It's a feature. Third, there's always a subtle power dynamic. They're always positioning themselves as slightly more knowledgeable, more connected, more essential than you. Not overtly, not obviously, but in small ways. Let me handle this. I have more experience. I'll take the lead here. You focus on the other thing, or trust me on this one. Over time, you become dependent on them. And once you're dependent, they have power. Fourth, they isolate you. Not dramatically, not all at once, but gradually your other relationships become less important. They become your primary counsel, your main advisor, your closest confidant. And when you're isolated from other perspectives, you lose your ability to see clearly. You're in their reality, and their reality serves them, not you. Let me tell you what happened when I finally confronted James. He denied everything, of course. Then he turned it around, made it seem like I was the problem. I was ungrateful. I was paranoid. I was imagining things, classic manipulator move. When caught, they gaslight you. They make you question your own perception of reality. And if you're not strong, if you don't trust yourself, you'll back down. You'll apologize. You'll accept their narrative. You'll give them more power. I didn't back down. I ended the partnership. It cost me. Financially. Professionally. It was painful. But it was the best decision I ever made. Because staying in that relationship, it was destroying me. Not just my business, my judgment, my confidence, my sense of self. Manipulators don't just take your money or your opportunities. They take your ability to trust yourself. And once that's gone, you're lost. 2's type 6. The moral corrupter, this one is subtle. This one is insidious. Because they don't start by asking you to do something wrong. They start by normalizing it. Let me tell you about a colleague. We'll call him Thomas. Thomas was successful, very successful. And when I was younger, I admired that success. I wanted to learn from him, to understand how he'd built his wealth. So when Thomas started mentoring me, I was grateful. At first, the advice was solid. Work hard, be smart with money, build relationships. But then slowly, the advice started to shift. You know, sometimes you have to bend the rules a little. Everyone does it. It's just how business works. If you're too honest, you'll never get ahead. Little comments, dropped casually, never explicitly telling me to do something unethical, just normalizing it. Then came the test. Thomas invited me to participate in a deal. The deal, on the surface, looked legitimate, but there was an element to it that wasn't quite right. Not illegal, but ethically gray. Thomas presented it as no big deal. This is how it's done. Everyone structures deals this way. And I was torn, because I respected Thomas, and I wanted the opportunity. But something in my gut, something deep, was screaming at me. Here's what the moral corrupter does. They move the line not all at once, not dramatically, but gradually. First, it's a small compromise, something that feels barely questionable. Just don't mention this detail to the client. It's not relevant anyway. Then it's something a bit more significant. Let's structure this so it looks different than it is, for tax purposes. Then it's something actually wrong. We need to misrepresent this number, just this once. Each step seems small. Each step is justified with, everyone does it, or it's not technically illegal, but you're being led down a path. And at the end of that path, you're someone you never wanted to be. 2, I've seen this destroy people. Good people. Ethical people. They start their careers with integrity. Then they meet someone successful who operates in gray areas. And they think, maybe that's what it takes. Maybe I'm being naive. So they make a small compromise. Then another. Then another. And 10 years later, they look in the mirror and they don't recognize themselves. Let me be very clear about something. The people who tell you that you need to compromise your ethics to succeed, they're lying. Not always consciously. Sometimes they believe it themselves. But it's still a lie. Because yes, you might make money through unethical means. You might build a business through manipulation. You might achieve external success through moral compromise. But you won't be able to sleep at night. You won't be able to look your children in the eye. You won't be able to live with yourself. And eventually, it catches up with you. The lie gets exposed. The scheme collapses. The reputation is destroyed. 2, I didn't participate in Thomas's deal. It cost me. He was angry. He withdrew his mentorship. He bad-mouthed me to others. But years later, Thomas was investigated for fraud. The everyone does it defense didn't hold up. He lost his business, his reputation, his freedom for a while. And I realized saying no to that deal didn't cost me anything. It saved me everything. Here's how you identify the moral corrupter. They normalize unethical behavior with phrases like, everyone does it. It's just how business works. If you're not willing to play the game, you won't succeed. They mock integrity as naivety. They frame ethical people as weak or foolish. And they're always testing you. Small requests at first, to see if you'll compromise. If you do, the requests get bigger. Let me tell you something I learned. Your reputation is the only thing you truly own that can never be taken from you, unless you give it away, and once it's gone, it's almost impossible to get back. The moral corrupter wants you to trade your reputation for short-term gain. Don't do it, ever, because the cost is always higher than the benefit. 2 Sugars Type 7. The energy vampire. This one is different from the others, because they don't want your money. They don't want your success. They want your energy, your time, your attention, and they will drain every drop of it if you let them. Let me tell you about a person I knew. We'll call her Susan. Susan was in crisis, constantly. Every time I saw her, there was a new emergency, a fight with her boss, a problem with her family, a financial disaster, a health scare, and every time she needed to talk for hours. At first, I was compassionate. I wanted to help. I'd listen. I'd offer advice. I'd try to solve her problems. But I started to notice something strange. The problems never got better. I'd give her advice. She'd ignore it. I'd offer solutions. She'd explain why they wouldn't work. I'd connect her with resources. She'd never follow through. And the next week, there would be a new crisis. 2, the energy vampire doesn't want solutions. They want attention. They want to feel important, to feel cared for, to be the center of someone's world. And they'll create crisis after crisis to get it. 2, here's what makes them dangerous. They're incredibly draining. Every conversation with them leaves you exhausted. Every interaction requires enormous emotional energy, and you get nothing back, because they're not interested in you, in your life, in your challenges. The conversation is always about them. I knew someone who spent 5 years trying to help an energy vampire. 5 years. Countless hours of phone calls, meetings, late-night conversations, thousands of dollars lent, never repaid job opportunities created, never appreciated. And at the end of those 5 years, the energy vampire was in exactly the same place, still in crisis, still needing help, still demanding attention. But my friend had wasted 5 years of his life. 5 years he could have spent building his business, developing relationships that were reciprocal, investing in his own growth. Gone. Given to someone who took everything and gave nothing. 2, here's how you identify the energy vampire. Every conversation somehow becomes about them and their problems. You try to share something about your life, and within 2 minutes, they've redirected the conversation back to themselves. They have a crisis every week. There's always something, always drama, always emergency, and they never follow through on solutions. You give advice, they don't take it. You offer help, they don't use it. Because if they solved their problems, they'd lose their source of attention. 2, let me tell you the hardest lesson I learned about energy vampires. You cannot save them. You can't, no matter how much you care. No matter how much you help, they have to save themselves. And until they're ready to do that, every minute you spend trying to rescue them is wasted. 2, I had to learn to set boundaries. To say, I care about you, but I can't be your therapist. I can't solve your problems for you. To limit my time and energy with people who only took and never gave. It felt cruel at first, but then I realized it wasn't cruel. It was necessary, because my energy is finite. I can give it to people who drain me, or I can give it to people who energize me. I can invest it in relationships that are reciprocal, or I can pour it into bottomless pits. The choice is mine. And once I started making that choice consciously, my life changed dramatically. 2 Type 8, the yes. Man, now this one might surprise you, because we're taught that we want people who support us, who agree with us, who say yes. But the yes man, they're more dangerous than you think. Let me tell you about a business leader I observed. Successful man, built a significant company, and he surrounded himself with yes men. Every idea he had brilliant. Every decision he made genius. Every strategy he proposed perfect. His team never disagreed, never questioned, and for a while it seemed to work. The company grew. The leader felt validated. Everyone was happy. But then, the leader made a bad decision, a significant strategic mistake. It was obvious to people outside the organization. But inside, nobody said anything, because they'd been trained not to disagree. The culture was support the leader, say yes, go along. And so that bad decision got executed, and it cost the company millions. Here's what the yes man does. They rob you of reality. They create an echo chamber where you only hear what you want to hear. They validate your biases, confirm your assumptions, reinforce your worst instincts. And in that echo chamber, you make terrible decisions because you're not getting pushback. You're not getting challenged. You're not getting the truth. 2, I learned this lesson through painful experience. I made a bad investment decision once. I was excited about it. I thought I'd found a great opportunity. And everyone around me, they supported it. Great idea. You're so smart to see this. This is going to be huge. Not one person pointed out the obvious flaws, not because the flaws weren't there, but because they didn't want to disappoint me. They didn't want to seem negative. They didn't want to challenge me. So I made the investment, and I lost a significant amount of money. 2, after that, I learned to value disagreement. I learned to seek out people who would tell me when I was wrong. I learned that the people who challenge you, who push back, who force you to think harder, those are the people who actually care about you. The yes men, they care about staying in your good graces. They care about not rocking the boat. They care about being liked. But they don't care enough to risk your disapproval by telling you the truth. Here's how to identify the yes man. They never disagree with you. They always find a way to support whatever you're saying. They're overly complimentary. And they have no strong opinions of their own. Ask them what they think. They'll tell you what they think you want to hear. 2, now, let me be clear. I'm not talking about people who generally agree with you because you think alike. I'm talking about people who agree with everything, regardless of merit. People who have made agreeableness their strategy for staying close to you. Those people, they're toxic because they'll let you walk off a cliff rather than risk your displeasure by warning you about the edge. You know what the cruelest part of toxic relationships is? It's not the damage they do when you're with them. It's the years you lose before you finally recognize what's happening. The opportunities you miss. The growth that never happens. The version of yourself you never become weight. Because you were carrying dead weight. 2, and the hardest toxic people to identify, the ones who steal the most years. They're the ones who've been in your life the longest. The ones you have history with. The ones you feel obligated to. The ones who know exactly which buttons to push because they installed the buttons. 2's are type 9, the dream killer. Let me tell you about someone very close to me. Someone I loved deeply. We grew up together, shared everything. We're inseparable for decades. But as we got older, as I started pursuing my ambitions, something shifted. Every dream I shared, they found a reason it wouldn't work. Every goal I set, they pointed out the obstacles. Every risk I considered, they emphasized the danger. At first, I thought they were being protective, that they cared about me and didn't want to see me fail. But over time, I realized something darker. They didn't want me to outgrow them. Every step I took forward created distance between us. Every success I had made them feel left behind. And so, unconsciously perhaps, they tried to keep me small. Not because they were evil, not because they didn't love me, but because my growth threatened our relationship as it was. The dream killer is one of the most painful toxic types because they often genuinely care about you. They're not manipulators. They're not opportunists. They're people who love the version of you they know and fear the version of you that you're becoming. 2, here's what makes them so dangerous. They have credibility with you. When a stranger tells you your dreams are foolish, you ignore them. But when someone who's known you for 30 years says the same thing, it lands differently. It makes you doubt yourself. It makes you think, maybe they're right. Maybe I am being naive. Maybe I should play it safe. I remember the conversation that finally opened my eyes. I'd been offered an incredible opportunity. Risky, yes, but potentially life-changing. And this person I trusted said something I'll never forget. Why can't you just be happy with what you have? Why do you always need more? In that moment, I realized they weren't worried about me failing. They were worried about me succeeding, because my success would mean change, growth, evolution, and they wanted me to stay the same. 2, here's how you identify the dream killer. They frame their negativity as concern. I'm just worried about you. I don't want to see you get hurt. I'm only saying this because I care. They bring up your past failures constantly. Remember when you tried that other thing and it didn't work? You've never been good at that kind of thing. Are you sure you're ready for this? They compare your dreams unfavorably to your current reality. You have a good life now. Why risk it? Most people would be grateful for what you have. Maybe you're being greedy. And here's the insidious part. Sometimes they're in your own family. A parent who wants you safe more than they want you fulfilled. A sibling who feels threatened by your ambition. A spouse who fears that your success will change the relationship. These are the hardest relationships to navigate because you can't just cut them out, but you also can't let them limit you. Let me tell you what I did. I had to create distance. Not emotional distance, not rejection, but distance in who I shared my dreams with. I stopped telling the dream killer about my plans. I stopped seeking their approval for my decisions. I loved them. I maintained the relationship. But I stopped giving them the power to veto my future. And you know what happened? Two things. First, I started achieving things I'd only dreamed about before, because I wasn't carrying their doubt. I wasn't second-guessing myself constantly. I was free to try, to fail, to learn, to grow. Second, our relationship actually improved, because I stopped resenting them for holding me back. I took responsibility for my own life. And eventually, when they saw me succeeding, when they saw I was okay, the resistance faded. Not completely. But enough. Type 10, the emotional blackmailer. This is the darkest one, the most manipulative, the most destructive, and it's almost always someone very close to you. The emotional blackmailer uses your love against you. They use guilt, obligation, and fear to control your behavior. And they're extraordinarily effective because they know exactly how much you care. Let me tell you about a relationship I witnessed between a successful businessman and his mother. This man, let's call him Michael, had built a thriving company. He was generous, took care of his family, helped everyone who needed it. But his mother, she was never satisfied. Every decision he made, if it didn't benefit her directly, was a betrayal. He invested in expanding his business. You care more about money than family. He took a vacation with his wife. I guess I'm not important enough to visit. He set a boundary about her visiting his home. After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me. The emotional blackmailer has a formula. Demand a resistance of pressure. Threat compliance at first, they make a demand. I need you to do this for me. When you resist, they apply pressure, guilt. After all I've done for you, obligation. Family is supposed to help each other. A fear. I don't know what I'll do if you don't help me. And if you still resist, they threaten. Not physical threats, emotional ones. I'll never forgive you for this. This will destroy our relationship. Everyone will know what kind of person you really are. And most people, they cave, because the emotional cost of resistance feels higher than the cost of compliance. So they do what the blackmailer wants. And the pattern repeats, over and over and over. Each time, the blackmailer gets more power. Each time, the victim gets weaker, until eventually the victim's entire life is organized around appeasing the blackmailer. Tuto, I've seen this destroy people, successful people, strong people, people who could stand up to anyone except this one person. They make career decisions based on what the blackmailer wants. They sacrifice their own needs, their own dreams, their own peace, just to avoid the emotional explosion that comes with saying no. To Michael finally broke free, but it took hitting rock bottom. His business was suffering because he was constantly distracted by his mother's demands. His marriage was strained because his wife felt like they were living for his mother, not for themselves. His health was deteriorating from the stress, and one day his wife gave him an ultimatum. You need to choose. Either you set boundaries with your mother, or I can't do this anymore. That's what it took. The threat of losing something he valued more than his mother's approval. 2, he set boundaries. His mother raged, cried, threatened, guilt, tripped. You're killing me with this. I can't believe you're doing this to me. What kind of son are you? It was brutal, painful, agonizing, but Michael held firm. And you know what happened? After several months, his mother adjusted. She didn't like the boundaries, but she accepted them because she realized she couldn't control him anymore. And the relationship, it actually became healthier because it was based on mutual respect, not manipulation. Here's how you identify the emotional blackmailer. They make you feel guilty for taking care of yourself. They use phrases like, "after everything I've done for you," regularly. They threaten to withdraw love or relationship if you don't comply with their demands. They make you responsible for their emotional state. "You're making me upset. You're causing me pain. If something happens to me, it's your fault." And they never respect boundaries. Every boundary you set, they push against. Every limit you establish, they test, because boundaries threaten their control. Let me tell you something critical. You cannot have a healthy relationship with someone who uses love as a weapon. You just can't. Because real love, it doesn't manipulate. Real love doesn't threaten. Real love doesn't make you choose between your own well-being and maintaining the relationship. The emotional blackmailer, they don't actually love you. They love the control they have over you. And until you're willing to risk losing the relationship, you'll never be free. Cue now. Let me give you the framework for protecting yourself. Because recognizing these people is only the first step. You also need to know how to establish boundaries, how to protect yourself, how to build a life where these toxic people can't destroy you. To press the protection framework, Step 1, audit your relationship. Say, "This is painful, but necessary." Take out a piece of paper. Write down every significant relationship in your life. Family, friends, business associates, romantic partners. Then, honestly, ask yourself these questions about each person. Does this relationship give me energy or drain my energy? Does this person support my growth or resist it? Does this person want what's best for me or what's most convenient for them? Do I feel better about myself after spending time with them or worse? Be ruthless in your honesty. Don't make excuses. Don't rationalize. Some people, you'll immediately know they're toxic. Others, you've been making excuses for so long that you can't see clearly anymore. But deep down, you know who leaves you feeling depleted. You know who makes you doubt yourself. You know who you're supporting far more than they're supporting you. Distance. Step 2, create distance strategically. Once you've identified the toxic people, you need to create distance. Not always complete separation, but strategic distance. For some people, you can cut them out entirely. The opportunistic friend, just stop responding. The envious competitor, minimize contact. But for others, especially family, complete separation isn't realistic or desirable. So you create strategic distance. 2, here's what that looks like. You limit the time you spend with them. You stop sharing sensitive information about your life. You don't seek their advice or approval. You maintain a cordial relationship, but you don't give them access to your inner world. They become surface-level relationships instead of deep ones. Step 3, build your inner circle carefully. Here's what most people get wrong. They think the goal is to have lots of relationships, lots of friends, lots of connections, big network, but that's not the goal. The goal is to have the right relationships. A small number of people who genuinely care about you, who challenge you when you're wrong, who support you when you're struggling, who celebrate your success without envy, who are building their own lives and want you to build yours. 2, I have maybe 5 people in my true inner circle. 5, after decades of life, thousands of acquaintances, hundreds of professional relationships. 5 people I trust completely. 5 people whose counsel I seek. 5 people who have earned the right to influence my decisions. Everyone else, pleasant acquaintances, professional relationships, surface-level friendships, but not in my inner circle, because that circle, it's sacred. It's where the real growth happens, where honest conversations occur, where vulnerability is safe, and I protect it fiercely. 2, Step 4, learn to say no. This is the skill that changes everything. Most toxic relationships persist because you can't say no. The dream killer asks you to play small, you comply. The emotional blackmailer demands your time, you give it. The energy vampire needs hours of your attention, you provide it. Because saying no feels cruel, selfish, wrong. But here's the truth. Saying no to them is saying yes to yourself. Every time you say no to something that drains you, you're saying yes to something that could fulfill you. Every time you say no to someone who doesn't value you, you're creating space for someone who will. 2, I had to learn this the hard way. I'm a naturally helpful person. I want to support people. I want to be generous. And toxic people, they exploit that. They know I'll say yes, so they keep asking. Until I learned That no is a complete sentence. I don't need to explain, don't need to justify, don't need to apologize. No, I can't do that. No, that doesn't work for me. No. The first few times, it felt terrible. The guilt was overwhelming. But then I noticed something. The people who genuinely cared about me, they respected my no. They might be disappointed, but they understood. The toxic people, they pushed back, got angry, tried to manipulate. And that difference, that told me everything I needed to know. Step 5, invest in yourself. The reason toxic people have so much power is because you don't value yourself enough. You accept treatment you shouldn't accept because you don't believe you deserve better. You tolerate manipulation because you don't trust your own judgment. You stay in draining relationships because you don't think you'll find better ones. But when you invest in yourself, when you develop your skills, your confidence, your self-worth, you naturally start requiring better treatment. Not arrogantly, not demandingly, but quietly, firmly. You simply stop tolerating what you used to tolerate. I've spent decades investing in myself, reading, learning, growing, developing wisdom. And the more I grew, the less tolerance I had for toxic behavior. Not because I became judgmental, but because I understood my own worth. And I refused to let anyone diminish it. Let me tell you what happens when you implement this framework. First, you'll lose some relationships, and that will hurt. Even toxic relationships, they're familiar. They're comfortable in their own dysfunctional way. Letting them go, it creates a void. But then something beautiful happens. The void fills with better people, healthier relationships, genuine connections, with time for yourself, energy for your goals, space to breathe. And you realize you weren't losing relationships. You were losing dead weight. And now you can finally fly.